All right, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our 9th Zoom briefing. This is our 10th total briefing. As you know, we had a press conference on the bridge last Saturday. This is our 9th briefing. This will be our last daily briefing. We will resume next week with our regular press briefings, which are Wednesday at noon. Those are Wednesday at noon via Zoom, and we will be sending you a link for that in the next day or two. So I'd like to welcome you. Today's Friday. Happy Friday, everyone. We made it through the week, and for a lot of us here at the Emergency Operations Center, our week is not over. Nor is it over for the people in Pajaro. We'll be working closely with them all weekend, and that's why we're here. So this afternoon, we have representatives from environmental health with us, our public health services group. We have invited folks from Clinica de Salud. I'm not sure if Erick Lopez was able to join. I don't see him on yet, but hopefully they will. And then also we have our public works folks. Unfortunately, one of the assistant director, Tom Bonigut, had a family emergency. He is not able to be here today, and Randy Ishii's in a meeting. However, they did provide me with a written report, which I will provide you all as well. We also have Roderick Franks from our shelter operation unit. And then we're very happy to have with us today Brian Ferguson from the Governor's Office of Emergency Services, known as CalOES, because we know you all had a lot of questions in the past about the state's role in this disaster response and recovery. And then also invited was Pajaro Sunny Mesa Water, and I don't see that person on yet, so hopefully they will be on. But okay, great, thank you very much. So we'll get started. As you know, yesterday we had re-entry for the residents of Pajaro at 10 a.m. in the morning, a day earlier than we expected. And also we let everyone know that the reason, and just a good reminder, the reason we're able to enter a day early was because we met all our operational objectives to allow for reentry, both from the county side and of course in partnership with state agencies that were supporting us in this effort. So we do want to thank CAL FIRE, CalOES, and the California Water Resources Agency, among others, for helping us with these objectives. And a big really want to thank the our logistics teams and public works team, because without them, and of course our environmental health team, without them we would not have met this objective as early as we did. And so what I'd like to do today is kind of focus on the kind of post reentry and what are the next steps with regard to Pajaro. And we'll also deal with, an update from environmental health. As you know, floods are very challenging types of disasters, and they create very unique circumstances and situations that require attention to detail on how they're managed. And so with us today is Marnie Flagg, again, from our Environmental Health Bureau. And Marnie has some very important information with regard to environmental health, hygiene, and also debris removal. So Marnie, welcome to our briefing today, and we welcome your information.
Thanks, Nick. I just want to thank everyone for the efforts that have been going on for the re-entry yesterday. Everyone's patience was greatly appreciated. So the health and hygiene centers that are set up at the middle school and the park were very well visited yesterday. Sometimes supplies can be running low, but if you exercise patience, we do have deliveries coming in as frequently as possible. Our logistics team is amazing, and they are working very rapidly to get things delivered as fast as possible for everyone to come and pick up. So at the park location, we have showers, laundry facilities, portable restrooms. We also have our public health team there with information and we'll speak on some other services that are there later. At the middle school location, we also have laundry services, showers, and portable toilets for your use. There is water available for pickup. So we want to just really invite the community to go to these locations for your hygiene needs. And there will be people there to answer your questions. Now, when you are at home, we do ask that when you're cleaning and sorting your debris from any floodwater damage, that you utilize the graphic that you see on your screen to separate your waste and push it to the curb. We don't want to put it right in the road because then we're going to have a hazard for traffic and for the pickup itself. But as you can see, you do want to separate it into these different sections. I was driving through Pajaro this morning and I did see appliances already pushed out that were sealed with tape. And I thought that was amazing that the community has already been so vigilant in accommodating that request. I've seen mud piles. I've really seen that the community is paying attention and participating. And I think that the debris pickup team and the FEMA relief will really appreciate that from all of us. So I will leave it at that right now. And environmental health is out in the field. You'll see us with yellow vests on. And if you have any questions, just, wave us down and let us know.
Thank you very much, Marnie. We appreciate that. Yes, and a big shout out to our logistics team as well. We do have our chief of logistics, Debra, also listening into our briefing today. Her team has moved mountains in regards to getting the supplies that are important for the community. Next, I want to go to our friend Debra Hopgood from our public health services to talk to again reiterate the information about medical services that are available to our community. And then once she gets finished, we'll hear from one of our great partners in healthcare for the Pajaro community from Clinica de Salud. Debra, good afternoon and welcome to our briefing.
Good afternoon, Nick. Thank you. So as the Pajaro residents have been able to re-enter the area, we at the health department have worked to bring some of the resources that we've been deploying at the shelters back into that area to provide both medical care and behavioral health support for the residents actually in the area where they are. So much like caring for those while they were staying at the shelter, this is really a team effort, and it's many different healthcare providers from many different organizations working as a team. It involves a lot of people, and that's what it's taken to make this a successful effort and to provide those services. So we want to thank those community-based providers in particular and all of our different team members that are participating. Currently, we have 2 community-based healthcare organizations that are providing care out of their mobile clinics in the Pajaro area. And again, this is important because it allows many of the residents to continue seeing the providers that they would see on a day-to-day basis if it wasn't in the midst of a flood or an emergency. It allows for continuity of care and for continued relationship and a little more comfortable experience with healthcare providers. So currently we have Salud para la Gente that is at Cultura in the Pajaro area, and we also have Clinica de Salud, which is located at Pajaro Park. Both of those providers are in mobile clinics. They have everything ranging from physicians to RNs to dentists to behavioral health support there as well. Additionally, there are separate behavioral health support through counselors and therapists at Pajaro Park, and some community health workers on site in Pajaro as well, who can help with things like outreach, education, some advice on working with debris removal, making sure that people are staying safe. And then finally, we still have a large number of people who are staying in the shelter at Watsonville throughout the day and returning there at night after they've done work on their homes throughout the day. So we're also continuing to support both medical and behavioral health needs at the shelter throughout all of this as well. So we encourage the residents to utilize these services as they're needed to make sure that they continue to address any chronic medical conditions, to help prevent future issues by ensuring that they're eating and drinking appropriately and getting adequate rest and sleep as they're working so hard on their homes. So, and we also ask that they seek care for any issues or injuries that may arise and make use of those medical providers. And I'll leave some of the details to our partners at Clinica de Salud to speak about.
Thank you, Deborah, very, very much. And I believe we either have Eric or Ruben from Clinica de Salud with us this afternoon. Would you like to, is it Ruben or Eric? I'm not sure who's on the line.
Hi, everyone. It's Ruben.
Okay, great, Ruben. Thank you very much. So why don't you talk about the services that Clinica de Salud provides to the residents of Pajaro, not just, in this disaster, but, in your normal service delivery.
Yes. So we have 13 clinics throughout Monterey County. We provide medical, dental, and optometry services throughout the county. Right now, through our mobile clinic, we are providing medical and dental services to all Pajaro residents. These services are free of charge. That's for the medical visit. And then for if they require labs or medications, we are also providing those services free of charge. And we go and pick up the medications for the patients, and we schedule pick a time for them to come to our mobile clinic to pick up their medications. Again, so we have free dental, free lab services, and free medications as well.
Great, thank you very much, Ruben, and stay with us. And when we get to the Q&A, people might have questions for you. All right, so I'm going to give you the sewer system update that I received from Public Works this morning. Pajaro County Sanitation District sewer force main was brought back online last night at about, early this morning at about 0300 hours. And currently Public Works is monitoring the system for any issues. Sunny Mesa Water District has been notified, informed that the sewer lines are back online. Also got a report that most of the roads in Pajaro were reopened yesterday. And there's vast needs throughout the county.
Jill, thanks so much for taking the time. You were appointed in 2021. At that time, only one of two women to lead a NASCAR sanctioned facility, and amid COVID. What does the last 2 years look like for you?
It's been a ton of new experiences. I've been in NASCAR for a long time, but never at the track level. So that was a new learning curve. I think that trying to move back to California during the middle of COVID with all the restrictions and the good old days of the red, yellow, orange levels and things, trying to run an event.
KTVU, please mute your system. Thank you. Well, sorry about that, folks. Sorry for that interruption. Public Works continues to address other needs throughout the county. As you all know, there's a lot of areas in southern Monterey County that experienced a tremendous amount of damage from this winter storm event, and also the community of San Ardo, and those needs are continuing to be met by our Public Works Department. I want to turn now to shelter operations, and we have Roderick Franks, the Assistant Director of the Department of Social Services for the County of Monterey. Roderick, welcome, and we look forward to getting your update on shelter operations. Roderick, can you hear us? Or
growing up, I didn't really see representation of someone who was adopted, who is living with a disability.
Hold on, Roderick. KTVU, please mute. Go ahead, Roderick.
Thank you so much. Roderick Franks, Assistant Director of Social Services for County of Monterey. It's my pleasure to let you all, to inform you all that we will continue our shelter operations as we move into this re-entry phase. The Watsonville shelter is staying open. Registered guests at that shelter are able to come and go as they are required to as part of the re-entry process. We continue to work on long-term solutions for those residents who are unable to return to their own homes. I would just like to point out that continuing these shelter operations is a big lift. We have over 100 disaster service workers each and every day staffing our shelters. And those are just the frontline workers. That's not necessarily including all the ancillary support that's required, as you heard earlier, like with healthcare, food support. And all of those are additional. We may be considering consolidating some of our other shelter operations in the city of Castroville, Seaside, and Salinas, and concentrating those operations in Watsonville. Currently, the Watsonville shelter has a census of 384 guests, and that is down from yesterday's census of 446. So we're actually seeing people taking advantage of the evacuation orders being lifted and the reentry possibilities. As indicated earlier, there are hygiene hubs located in the city of Pajaro for those guests that are utilizing reentry. And we continue to work with our community-based agencies to provide support both in the shelter and are looking at options to provide that support outside of the shelter for those persons not actually registered as shelter guests. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Roderick, for that report. Now I'm happy to invite Brian Ferguson from the Governor's Office of Emergency Services, known as CalOES. So Brian is in the PIO team over there. And Brian, we appreciate you being here. Our community and our media in the area have had lots of questions in the last several days about CalOES's role in the disaster response and recovery. CalOES is a very important partner to the County of Monterey, and we appreciate your being here to support us. Go ahead, Brian, and why don't you give us an update?
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for having us on. I want to just start by commending the local officials, first responders that you're hearing from on this call, who are doing a tremendous job in what continues to be an ongoing challenging event, which comes right on the heels of an earlier storm system that we experienced in these same communities in January. And so just want to emphasize the broad role that local officials play in supporting this effort. And, you know, on behalf of our bigger state family, just want to say that we're here for the long haul to make sure that the county has what they need and that we can get resources to folks who are really going through a challenging time. Our hearts are with all of those who have been displaced by this disaster. It is so clear from what's been discussed on this call and what we're seeing online that there's just an incredible amount of effort underway to get folks back in, provide resources that are there. And from our part, you know, we are very keen to share that as the fire trucks go away, as we move out of a response posture and into this next phase of the disaster, that the state will continue to work closely and support these localized efforts and bring in whatever resources we can to help the community rebuild and recover. Can share that earlier today, a group of senior state leaders was in the county meeting with the CAO, some of the key leaders, and just starting to map out what a long-term plan looks like that will continue well beyond, you know, this week into the weeks and months to come. You know, walking through the kind of suite of state programs that could be brought to bear to support the community. And every disaster is unique in terms of what the impacts are on the ground and what the needs are of the community. And one of our role as the state coordinator is to kind of customize the way that we support the community, because what happens here is going to be different than what happened in Merced County earlier this year, different than what happened in the Camp Fire. And so kind of just understanding the unique needs so we can bring in the appropriate mix of state, local, federal resources, private philanthropic partners to support that recovery as well. Can share that there are hundreds of folks in the county from the state doing various work to help expedite the recovery already, whether it's environmental protection staff looking at the stormwater systems and sewer treatment plants. We have staff from Department of Toxic Substances working on household hazardous waste in close conjunction with local public works officials. We still have DWR flood fighting teams working closely to shore up the levees, as well as our CalOES long-term recovery folks who are on the ground tallying damage, seeking to maximize the type of support we can bring in from the state, as well as our federal government partners. The sheltering, as you provide a great update on, will continue to be important. Our Department of Social Services works closely with the counties, with the Red Cross, to understand what the needs are so we could bring in shelter support if that's needed, whether food, water, comfort kits, cots, and those are all available as we speak right now. More broadly, as we go forward, the effort on behalf of the state now turns to more of a paper fight and a tallying effort where we are working closely with officials in Monterey and Pajaro, as well as the broader communities that have been impacted by this storm, to maximize federal aid. And that's what our goal is to bring in every available federal program that we can for this community to do that. And in cases where perhaps that those federal programs may not be eligible, matchmaking with other programs to provide support where we can. As we go forward, the goal is to move as quickly as possible to get to the numbers we need to. We don't make federal law in terms of federal requirements, but what we do know is that we can work closely with our colleagues at the Federal Emergency Management Agency to try to move quickly and expeditiously. And if we meet the criteria, to bring that aid in. If perhaps we don't, we can find other avenues, whether it's through state programs, philanthropic programs, to try to meet the needs. We understand that perhaps there's some gaps, and even if we were to receive a federal declaration on who might be eligible, and from there, we are going to try to fill those gaps to the greatest extent possible to get the community back on their feet to rebuild and recover. As this moves forward, we'll also work closely with trusted messengers in the community, the local community-based organizations that we've heard referenced in several of the reports before will continue to be important, because not always is the state, FEMA, or even our wonderful colleagues at the county the best messenger to get the word out in terms of the programs that are available. And so we want to work with partners on the ground who know this community, who understand the unique needs, so that they can help us have broad reach and help get the aid where it's needed, and also bring up needs as they come, of understanding, okay, we have a gap here, how do we plug that? So just want to share that work is underway. It will continue in the weeks to come, and that, we're looking not just in Monterey, but more broadly across the state in terms of how do we maximize both our state and federal programs to support the community. And we will continue to be here over the duration to find a way that really supports the whole of the community and their needs and gets people back to life as quickly as possible, and bring that empathy and support and compassion from our perspective to bear to assist our partners. So with that, we'll let you complete, but I'll stay on for any questions at the end.
Thank you, Brian. Really appreciate it, and appreciate your time today. And we also appreciate very much the state leaders that are here today meeting. I was in that meeting as well, and we appreciate that. All right, lastly, I'm going to turn to Sunny Mesa, Pajaro Sunny Mesa Water District, and I believe we have Judy on with us. Judy, can you give a quick update? What is the activities today with the Water District?
We are actually being inspected by the State Water Board's Drinking Water Division. And as soon as we're wrapped up here, we're going to start preparing for the startup of the water system by 8 o'clock tomorrow morning.
Excellent. That's welcome news, Judy, and would like you to stay on with us, and perhaps there'll be some questions coming from our friends in the media. Josh, I see your hand raised, which I appreciate. I'm going to jump over first to the questions in the chat, which Adriana from KSMS Channel 67 asked about the water. I think we answered that question, and the shelters. I'll jump down to Celia from Monterey County Weekly. When is the debris and trash removal going to begin? And as Marnie said, service begins on Monday. We do have a removal timeline that we've established, and we'll be happy to push that out to you all after the call. We do have a number of resources available with regard to trash removal and debris removal, and we would very much welcome the support on getting that out to the community. All right, let's go to the hands. We have Josh from KSBW Action News 8. Go ahead, Josh.
Thank you. My question is mostly for OES, but there is a follow-up for the county after this. But what are they looking for in terms of getting approval for FEMA funding? Is it a threshold of damage? Is it a dollar sign amount? And is that a hard number, or is it based off several factors?
Yeah, thank you, Josh, for that. And, thank you for all the reporters who during these disasters become amateur FEMA and meteorological experts. All of you have a challenging job, and it is a very complex federal program. The short answer is it's all the above. Depending on the program, there's different requirements in terms of either a number of homes or a type of roadways, and so it depends on the program we're trying to look at, right? There we have what's called individual assistance, which is direct money in people's hands. There's requirements for that, which are typically related to severely damaged or destroyed homes. And then there's other things like public assistance, which is more related to total financial impacts for roadways, bridges, courthouses, public infrastructure. And so that's happening right now. And I'll say the good thing about this storm is that it wasn't as damaging as what we saw in January. And the bad thing about this storm is it wasn't as damaging statewide as we saw in January, right? And so we're able to get there quickly in terms of the amount of severity we saw in January. And while in pockets and including really horrific damage in the community of Pajaro, we didn't have as broad of statewide damage as we saw in January. And that's why it's taking longer, because we begin damage assessments in one county, and our goal is to continue to count and total up that damage, until we can meet the thresholds, which I encourage your colleagues at FEMA can talk probably more astutely on what those requirements are. But we have started in Monterey. We've also expanded now into our Central Valley counties that experience aid. And the goal is to put together an overall package of documentation that will meet the federal requirements. And if we need to continue to go broader to calculate that, we will. Obviously we want to move as quickly as possible, but the goal is to qualify for as many financial federal programs as we can to bring aid to the communities. And that work is ongoing. There's people working hand in glove with FEMA on the ground right now, hand in glove with the counties to total damage and put together a very sophisticated request that we can put forward the federal government. The work is happening as we speak. A request is often like a wedding ring. You want to have a pretty good idea of the outcome before you send it in, right? And so we are trying to do our homework so we don't send a request up that could ultimately be turned down or sit on the shelf for many months as it goes back and forth, because again, the idea is to bring as much aid in as quickly as possible. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Brian, for that. Josh, you have a follow-up?
Yeah, quick follow-up for you, Brian, is so if we're purely looking at FEMA assistance, are we currently waiting on CalOES to finish their assessments and get that number to Washington, or is it on the counties to get it to CalOES at this time?
It's both. These assessments happen jointly between the counties, state and federal government. In order to move it quickly, we don't just send the county out and then go separately to validate their work. To move it quickly, we go jointly with the counties out into the field. In many cases, our FEMA colleagues are along as well, and we're tallying those numbers every single night to see if we get there tonight, we think we could do it, we'll file it. If we need to take another day or two to get to that number, the goal is to get to the number as quickly as possible.
Thank you, Brian. All right, let's go to Ray from the Monterey County Weekly. Welcome, Ray, and go ahead with your question.
Hi. First off, just wanted to make sure I heard Judy right. So Pajaro Sunny Mesa water system, the expectation is that that'll start operating again by 8 a.m. tomorrow morning?
Go ahead, Judy.
We will begin the process at 8 o'clock tomorrow morning, and it will take several hours.
And so does that mean that drinking water will be restored, or potable water will be restored and by then, or if not, by when?
Non-potable water will be restored, and it would take probably anywhere between 1 to 2 weeks to get to be able to determine if the water is potable.
Okay, thank you.
And we will continue to provide bottled water for that community.
And I had
as a follow-up. Right.
Okay, great, good to know. Yeah, just following up on with CalOES on some of the stuff that Brian mentioned there. So like obviously I understand, from what you're saying, it seemed like the damage was maybe more concentrated, not as widespread statewide as what we saw in January. I'm correct in thinking though that the declarations are issued on like a county by county basis, right? So that from when you see the president issue a disaster declaration, it does kind of signify individual counties, right? So if it's not, notwithstanding the damage in an area like the Central Valley, for example, if there is a concentration of damage in Monterey County, then Monterey County itself could be eligible for FEMA assistance. Am I correct in thinking that?
Typically at the state level, you will see, so there's local states of emergency when a county says an event overextends the county's ability to respond to, the county can declare a state of emergency and ask for certain regulatory waivers or support. And the same thing at the state level. If a emergency goes beyond the state's ability to respond, we can seek a state of emergency on a county by county level for support. The numbers in terms of where it happens, we had more, if we thought we had the damage just in Monterey, to proclaim just for Monterey, we'd move forward immediately with that. The preliminary numbers we're seeing right now aren't there, which is why we continue to add counties to try to get to the totals. And the goal is to get there. And, for comparison's sake, the storms we had in January, we initially requested 3 counties in the presidential emergency declaration. The president approved 3 counties, and then we had that aid flowing, and then we were able to add additional counties on as we totaled up the numbers. And so I think the short answer is, if we thought that we could get there for Monterey, we would apply right this very minute. We're not there in terms of meeting the metrics that are in federal law. And again, this is a federal law, and we probably, like you, would like to apply now if we thought we could make it. But again, our goal is to build as quick a case as possible that helps as many people as possible and ultimately provides aid as rapidly as we can. And we'll continue to do that with an idea that we're going to move expeditiously to maximize that federal support.
Totally understand that. And it just, is there, where's the damage threshold? Like, what is the the dollar amount? Like, I've asked folks at state, county, federal level, and the number doesn't seem to be forthcoming. I'm just kind of curious what that magic figure is.
Again, I don't work for FEMA. FEMA could probably tell you more astutely. For public assistance as a round number, for roads, bridges, that sort of thing, it's in the neighborhood of $70 million. And then for individual assistance, that again goes to the counting of homes. And it'll vary depending on a number of factors, including the amount of insurance that people have, the severity of the damage in terms of homes that are completely destroyed versus almost entirely destroyed versus just damaged. But a good ballpark for you is between 10 and 1,200 homes. And again, FEMA might be able to give you some more clarity on their specific requirements and what counts and doesn't count, but that's your ballpark.
You said 1,000 to 1,200 homes?
Yes.
Okay. And sorry, just a couple more things on this, just so I'm clear on it. And so, like, what we've heard from, and also, is business damage included in that as well? I know there's also insurance factors there as well, but what we were hearing on these calls from folks at the on the agricultural sector, folks at Farm Bureau and those kinds of ag industry groups, was that the damage from these storms was even more impactful than the ones in January, more widespread, both in the Salinas and Pajaro valleys. Is that something that's on your radar, and is that something that might move the needle a bit quicker?
That's even a different set of federal programs, but there is federal programs that could be of assistance there through the USDA. And if you'd like, we could take it offline and connect you with a federal representative and kind of go through all that. You're doing a really good job kind of going into the vagaries of federal policy on this, and bless you for that. And if you want to talk offline, we can connect you with some of our wonderful federal colleagues who live and breathe this stuff and can kind of walk you through.
My very last question for you, Brian, on this, and I'll get offline, is the you mentioned about the state resources on the ground, and it's clear that there's a lot in terms of infrastructure work. It seems like you mentioned folks working on the water district and all of that on the levees. And can you give me a better sense, just as far as like on the individual business assistance side, like what's on the ground for folks? It does seem like, I'm sure that a lot of the work to supplement what the folks at the county have been doing is there, but just as far as like what from a CalOES and other state agencies perspective has been on the ground in the past week or two to kind of help the folks in Pajaro, specifically individual assistance and stuff like that.
Again, the individual assistance, that's what we're talking about, applying for those federal programs. Business assistant is a
No, I was referring more about like, you know, emergency assistance for people on the ground.
Sure. There's been thousands of first responders from the state, from CAL FIRE to the National Guard, to, you know, DWR, to the Water Board, in various capacities since the beginning of this incident, with an eye towards helping the community rapidly respond to the disaster. And then as we move into the next phase, it becomes slightly a different group of folks who are more on our social services side, who are care providers, who provide sheltering, feeding, support for long-term infrastructure. I believe we had folks from the Department of Fish and Wildlife who are helping with, you know, things we can do there. Folks from the Environmental Protection Agency who are working on household hazardous waste. So the Department of Toxic Substances Control. You'll also have eventually folks from the California Department of Resources and Recycling who will help with the debris removal once we reach that stage as well. And you also have folks from our Department of Food and Agriculture who've helped with the movement of livestock and coordinating to make sure that in our agriculture communities that we're taking protective measures, as well as folks from like CalOSHA and the Agriculture Labor Relations Board in such a community that's so heavily focused on agriculture, making sure that we're meeting our labor standards and protecting folks who may be working in the fields, and that businesses are not taking advantage of everyone, that there's protective measures in place. And so it really is a broad-based response effort, which doesn't undercut the fact that this is a challenging circumstance, right? That this is something that we had a basically historical weather event that's displaced many hundreds of people. And you know, it's going to be a challenge for a period of time going forward, and we'll continue to work closely with the community to get as many bodies, as much support in to help these folks on the road to recovery.
Thank you very much, Brian, and thank you very much, Ray, for the questions. Christian Balderas from KSBW Action News 8 had his hand up. Christian, why don't you go ahead and ask your question live? I know it's in the chat, but go ahead and indulge me and ask your question.
Yeah, sure. I appreciate it, Nick. Wanted to clarify, I heard that the sewer lines are back up. I wanted to make sure, does that mean that people already have sewage, or are there additional steps that need to be taken to get people their sewage?
So the sewer lines are being tested. The forced main is being tested and is up, but it needs the water system. The water system will need to be turned on first. And as I believe Judy mentioned, that is planned for tomorrow at 8 a.m. And then we'll put out a notice to the folks tomorrow whether or not it is safe to utilize those facilities. In the meantime, we do have the facilities in the two hubs at the Pajaro Valley Middle School, as well as the Pajaro Park. In addition to those stations, we have 150 mobile portable toilets and 40 hand sanitation stations throughout the community for folks. So we want to make sure the system is fully functional, Christian, before we give everybody the thumbs up that they can, you know, start to flush their toilets and whatnot.
Great, thanks.
You're welcome. Josh, we'll go back to Josh at KSBW Action News 8. Go ahead, Josh.
Thank you. Two questions though. First, to just quickly follow up on that, could you just list with non-potable water, what activity is showering okay with that water once it's returned, or is this purely for sewage basically?
I'm going to turn to Marnie in environmental health. Maybe Marnie, you might have some information with regard to what people can do with non-potable water.
Sure. With non-potable water, we don't want you to ingest it. So don't brush your teeth, don't cook with it, don't make ice with it, but you can shower with it. That's okay. Those activities are okay. You can clean with it, things like that.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you for that, Marnie. And again, Josh, we are providing water. So there's a no boil order. In other words, boiling water is not going to work either. So we are providing bottled water until we get the all clear, or until I should say Pajaro, Sunny Mesa gets the all clear with regard to the potability of the water. Josh, I know you have your hand still up. Did you have a follow-up?
Yeah, just one more follow-up, completely different subject, back to helping people in support, but this is for the county. So from my understanding, based off other stories, FEMA will help if anyone in the home is a US citizen, but they won't help non-citizens with federal aid. Is there an estimation of how many homes in Pajaro qualify for FEMA assistance if that is approved?
You know, that's a great question. So the only official numbers we have, Josh, are from the census, and the census reports are about approximately 2,000 folks in Pajaro, but we know anecdotally it's closer to 3, maybe 3,500. With regard to how many folks meet that criteria, I don't believe we have that number. But I can tell you that the county is committed to making sure that regardless of a person's citizen status or immigration status, or we are going to find support for them in one way, shape, or form, whether it be through nonprofit philanthropic activities, whether it be through the state partnerships we have with CalOES. I know the state is very much sensitive to those needs as well, and Brian could probably speak more to that than I can. But it is something that we're aware of, something that we are concerned with, and we're certainly mindful of it, and we will be putting as much effort as we can to helping those folks that may not have the proper documentation get support and assistance that they deserve and they need. Brian, do you have anything you want to add to that?
I think you're right in that. And, you know, obviously none of us are federal policymakers, but I think the ultimate goal is that where there is a gap in terms of support to communities, we treat human beings like human beings, and we treat them with compassion and support, and try to find a way to get to yes. Whether that's through, there are some state programs depending on the circumstances of the household that, you know, could provide assistance. Maybe some of these are not direct financial, but it could be things like housing assistance or meal assistance, disaster unemployment, depending on, you know, the circumstances. And then when there continues to be gaps with that, working closely with the philanthropic community to fund any gaps, or with community-based organizations. And there are both some federal and state programs that are specifically designed for undocumented individuals and families to bring them aid. And unfortunately, this is something that we do see in disasters, that disasters disproportionately impact our most vulnerable communities. And that includes older Californians. It includes people with disabilities, as well as people for whom English is not a first language, or who may have undocumented immigration status. And there's been a lot of investment in recent years, particularly under this governor, to shore up those programs. And California has some of the most robust programs in the country on this. It almost assuredly will in some cases may not be enough still, right? And so our goal and our work here is to maximize our ability to support these communities for the long haul, and also match make with our private partners for places where we as a state, or as a county, or as a federal government don't have the right programs. Try to find perhaps a faith-based organization, a community-based organization that may have a program that could be a good fit to help get support to those individuals or families.
Yeah, thank you, Brian. I think that's a good segue to remind folks too that the Community Foundation for Monterey County has a fund set up for the victims of this disaster, and the nonprofit organizations that they work with don't have those type of requirements that the federal government does, and so we understand the need, or working closely with those the Community Foundation to get the word out that folks in Monterey County can contribute to the disaster relief fund, and that aid will get directly to the people who need it the most. All right, so there was another question in the chat. This is about the water again. Judy, was water from Pajaro Sunny Mesa analyzed for any type of contamination? If so, what are the results? How long will it be going to take before drinking water is safe? Do you want to just touch on that again, Judy, please?
Yes, so we have not sampled, we have not received any indication that the water is contaminated, but we are assuming that it was because our water system is in the flood zone. So what I'm gonna say is it's gonna take about 2 weeks to be able to lift that bottled water order if we can determine that we were not affected by this contaminated water. And if it was, until we can flush it out and get those sample results to show and prove that we are no longer contaminated if we are.
Great, thank you very much. All right, do we have any other questions from our folks in the news media? Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I have one. It's just following with that one. What if, I mean, if you find any type of contamination in the water, what will be the following steps for that? I know this is hypothetical, but I would like to know.
We would go through a flushing process. Obviously, want to flush our system as much as possible because our water is safe to use, and so we would flush any of these flood waters if they were if our well was exposed. So yeah, a flushing process, and then continue to sample until we can determine that these flood waters are no longer in our system.
Great, thank you, Judy. Appreciate that. All right, so as I mentioned earlier, this was our 9th briefing, daily briefing. We will start weekly briefings, our normal weekly briefing schedule, which are every Wednesday at 12 noon. Everybody who's here will get that notification, and even those who aren't here will get that notification. I do want to thank all our guests today for being available to answer your questions. And as always, we are happy to answer any questions you may have after this briefing. You can contact us via email or via phone. I know you have my number, you have Maya Carroll's number, and I know you have Karen Smith's number. So please feel free to reach out to us. We want to provide the information. I think the most important messaging we can get out is on the debris removal. And if you need further information about debris removal, we're happy to provide that. For now,